Hi, everyone. This is David Christian from the Modern Martial Artist.
And this is Roy Foreman again, coming to you from somewhere out here in space.
And this
I have
is
to laugh, David. I have to make it fun. It has to be fun.
yes,
I don't take myself
everyone,
serious.
everyone does the professional login. So screw it. This is the Punch You Did Not See podcast. A lot of stuff is going to happen you didn't anticipate. So whatever. We're talking about Hagler because he's a great fighter, and he should be talked about.
Yes.
Roy, I'm going to let you, as usual, start off, and then I'll chime in with my thoughts.
Well, look, my thoughts on Marvin Hagler is this. Probably the most misunderstood and misappreciated fighter, not just middleweight champion, but misappreciated fighter in boxing history. I tell you, and the reason I say this is because he falls in that line between the great Sugar Ray Robinson and the other guys like Jake LaMotta, and the other guys from that era that he came in. And he was the first one really to dominate for so long. But it's like everything else. When you come back behind what was considered a great era, and really, when you look at the 70s, you didn't have a lot of great middleweights. You had some good middleweight fights, but you didn't have a lot of great middleweights. And Marvin kind of sneaked up on people. So then all of a sudden, the 80s, up pops this young man, Marvin Hagler. Bald head, looked menacing, but you had the Benny Briscoes that was out in Philadelphia, that was out. And at that time, probably the middleweights in Philly were maybe some of the best. Willie Warren Monroe was another good one that was pretty good. But they didn't dominate. Benny Briscoe was good. Georgie Benton was even, you can count him as part of that era in the late 50s and early 60s into the 70s. But these guys had retired, but they didn't dominate. Great fighters, but they didn't dominate. Marvin Hagler, basically, I think he lost his first fight, I want to say, and never lost another one Just in case we interview him, I say he never lost another. But
yeah, I think he lost one or two. He had some bad matchups or some bad scoring or something. I can't remember but he had a rocky start though.
He had a rocky start. So, but the guy held the title defenses for 25, I think, straight title defenses, something they would. I forget exactly
something insane. Absolutely
it was insane. He and Joe Louis did some insane things when it came to boxing. And Marvin, he's beaten Tommy, he's beaten everybody. Literally, he's beaten everyone. The fight with Sugar Ray Leonard, and we can say this: the shenanigans that people say that went on, and I'm there, okay, for the week, so I use the word shenanigans. There was a problem first with the gloves, right? Then there was a problem with who's going to be the judges. There's always a problem with who's going to be the referee, and we know the referee wound up being. But anyway, but there's a problem with the judges. Marvin Hagler was a world champion extraordinaire. They gave him very little. He wanted a 15-round fight. We'll make it 12. It never should have happened. So he was unappreciated by the boxing media because Ray Charles Leonard, Sugar Ray Charles Leonard, was the media golden boy at that time. And Marvin was not really appreciated until after he never came back to boxing anymore. And that's when all of a sudden you start people saying, oh man, that Marvin Hagler and the fight with Tommy Hearns and him was the war, greatest 3-round fight you ever going to see. Yeah, but that was some other fights along the way. The fight with Mustafa Hamza was a good fight. That probably was one of his best fights. And a lot of people thought it was a split decision. But, he was a champion. They gave him the benefits. Why didn't he get the same thing in the fight against Ray Leonard? I don't know. Yeah,
it's weird. When you look at it from a historical context, instead of being there at the time, it's like I was born in 87. So I had no idea any of this was going on. But looking back, you would think this guy would be the biggest superstar, and he absolutely wasn't. And he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and it motivated him. We were talking about boxers who have the natural talent and don't necessarily train as hard as they could. But Hagler is legendary for his training camps, where he would isolate himself the last couple of weeks and then just turn into a madman, just frenzied, fast-paced, running in army boots.
Yes.
all this crazy stuff. So he worked really, really hard for it, and he earned it. Maybe you could shed some light on why he wasn't more popular or appreciated at the time.
Okay, it's simple. And I heard people say this a lot of times. He didn't look like a star.
That's it?
That was it. So he didn't look like a star. And I'm just telling, these are words that were said. And it was by writers who said things about guys. You know, they wanted, okay, you got to remember this period now, late 70s, early 80s. And the more African-American fighters, but they got their afro. It's all about style. It's all about pizzazz. Marvin, like you just said, when he trained in the morning at 4 o'clock up there in Brockton, Mississippi, I'm sorry, Brockton, Massachusetts, I think it was, with the Petronelli brothers. These guys got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. He ran, and everything he looked, when they would show him, they showed the ice coming down not his head, I can't about to say his hair, but not his hair, but his head, and who am I to talk, right? But his head was, the ice was, but the ice was here. The ice was there, and he just looked so menacing. And they said he just doesn't look like. Well, Ray Leonard was totally opposite. They showed Ray in the warm-up suits. Back then they wore the little feel-out warm-up suits and things.
He looked like he would never hurt a fly.
Like he would never going to the gym. Driving up in his Rolls Royce, going to the gym. Atlas walking up, going to the gym. That wasn't his persona. I don't think he ever wanted a soft persona, but he wanted to be appreciated. And that was the reason why the sports writers are the ones who just refused to give Marvin Hagler the credit that he deserved as far as being a superstar. Marvin Hagler actually did commercials. A lot of people don't realize that. He just did commercials. He did for a Pizza Hut. He did it for Right Guard. He did it for, I think, another truck. So the guy was pretty much, maybe Madison Avenue.
He was out
something that we didn't see. But the guy was good. And I just think that his chip on his shoulder was the idea of saying, there's a butt naked guy running down the street, right? And you says there's Marvin Hagler over here, and there's Ray Leonard over here running down the street. Well, people are going to say, watch the butt naked guy, and nobody's going to pay attention to Marvin Hagler. That's the way it was with him. He was very unassuming. But at the time that I had met him, I never got to know him. I got to know Ray. Never got to know Marvin. But at the time, when I met him, one of the nicest guys I've ever been in the room with.
So it's not that he had any character flaws. It's just that his character wasn't in your face.
No, it wasn't. And see, I'll tell you something else. And we talk about, I think you and I had this conversation before about culture fights, right? Culture.
Yeah.
And Marvin and Ray was kind of part of that as well. Okay?
Really? I had no idea about that.
Well, see,
that's more like subtle subtext in the African American community at the time.
You look in Hagler's corner, who did you have? Petronelli's, Chelly's. I never got their name correct. But anyway, you had the Petronelli, basically 3 white guys in his corner, okay? Now, you look at Ray Leonard's corner, you got Jack Morton, Mike Leonard, and I forget the other guy's name, and his brother. All right, now, the African American community have that division type thing again. It's like, you got to make a choice. That's the way it was. I mean, that's the true part of the sport. It never should have. And people can deny those things all they want to, David. But I know because I was around them, so I know how it went. And that was the choice that they made. But people that knew boxing, I'm talking about the people that knew the sport of boxing, they knew what Marvin Hagler was. But of course, we didn't write the stories, and they didn't write the stories, so all the press went to Sugar Ray Leonard.
Well, I think if he was champion nowadays, I like to think that he would be far more popular.
No doubt.
I mean, the bald look is in nowadays to start with, but all the other reasons we talked about too. People like menacing now. I guess it wasn't as accepted as it was. You wanted to be, the outgoing people's champ that you could see around the block and have a beer with.
And sit down and make a sandwich. Because I used George as one. George was one of the nicest guys you ever seen, man. But when he stepped in the ring, because everybody said he wanted that Sonny Liston scowl, try to scare a guy, be so funny.
No, it'll make you recoil. If you're watching on your computer or on the TV, you see him scowl, you're just like, I'm out.
But you never saw it when you turned around. When you turned around, you saw a big laugh. And that's the way it was. I like to think that in today's market, or in today's media, as diversified qualified as it is with all the social media things that you have, that maybe he would be. But I honestly believe that situations being the same, we would appreciate him more. But I still think if they made it, it could be if they made it. Let's put it like that. If someone made an issue, it could be an issue. Shouldn't be, but they could.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk a little bit about what he did. He's a fascinating character in regards to his training and culturally and all of that. But let's talk about a little bit about what he did inside the ring. To me, there are two cool things that he did that, as a martial artist, watching him, I'm just astounded that he actually did them. One was in the same way, it was called a gazelle hook, right? Was the name given to when Floyd Patterson did it, and it kind of stuck. And then a lot of people use that same term for Joe Frazier, when you duck down and then you shuffle into the hook. And what Hagler did that was insane is he did that with his jab. I've never seen another fighter pull it off since then. I don't know how he got away with it. I guess maybe because they thought he was going to throw a hook. It's like, okay, he's loaded up for a hook, and then they go to block the side. And it's basically one of the most powerful, you could almost call it like a super long range jab. It almost has the same range as like a sidekick, in martial arts. And I'm sorry.
And that's what amazes me when I watch the martial artist fighters. Most of those guys, to me, are basically ambidextrous.
Yeah.
Because I've seen them use both sides. And Marvin Hagler was ambidextrous. Of course, he was a southpaw. He fought from the southpaw side. That's where I forget myself sometimes. Yeah, fought from the southpaw side. But he was ambidextrous, kind of like Tyson was. But he had to, so he could do things, like you said, with his jab that most guys couldn't do with their right hands. With his
That's
right
a good
jab,
point. That's a very good point, because that was his power hand too.
Yes, that was his power hand as well.
Had two power hands.
Yeah, and it's funny because if you see the punch before he knocks, before he stops Tommy, he hits Tommy with a powerful right hand, right? Bam, right off the hook. And of course, everybody's seen this shot because that's the one that made Tommy do the duck. But it comes across because that's Tommy again. That's that thing of everybody looking for this, the punch they didn't see.
Yeah, you pointed it out. That's the second thing I was going to say is the switch hitting. I've never seen a more natural switch hitter, because most people need to set up switching stances with some kind of elaborate footwork, like Willie Pep. In MMA, you have Dominic Cruz or TJ Dillashaw. But what Hagler would do is he'd just turn. He'd come at you with that lead hand hook or jab, and as you tried to escape to the inside, all of a sudden his lead hook was now his left hand.
It's not his left hand. That's right. That's what I'm saying. But those are some of the things. I don't know whether they taught him that or he was just natural at that. Because I've never seen him in a what is I'm looking for? They have the books where they're saying describe. I've never seen anybody teach that.
Yeah,
it's just something he done. The great trainer, Ray Arcel. I probably learned from the 10 years I was around Mr. Arcel. I went to a lot of boxing things. I used to work for the United States, or USA Boxing. At the time, it was the United States Olympic, or USOC. But so they sent us to classes a lot. And I went to every one that Ray Arcel did, whether it was in up in the Poconos, whether it was up in Lake Placid. We lived in Colorado Springs, so many times out of the year, so many months out of the year. But wherever he was, I always called him. And he would the one thing he told us was that every day you leave the gym, you have to learn something. He said, a gym is a school. He said, I want to call it the gym. He said, he didn't like the word trainer. He said, you're a teacher.
Yeah.
And I have to and every day you leave, I have to teach you something different. And I don't know whether Marvin Hagler learned that from watching. Sometimes you can see another kid do something. You go like, wow, how can I do that? But I never seen him when he hit the pants like everybody else when they was warming up. So I never seen whether the guy said, okay, basically, like you said, he didn't have to shuffle his feet. he just had it. It's like, hey, you think you're getting away from him? Guys, run away. Oh no, I'm not. Oh yes, well, I want you right over here. And that's what he did.
I always wonder that too. I've had the chance to ask a couple people, a couple professional fighters, and it's always 50-50. Some of them are like, oh yeah, I do this because this technique is this way, and I thought maybe I could do this way, or I saw them, like you said, And then some people are just like, oh yeah, that just felt right. So
Yeah,
it's always
right.
hard
Isn't
to
that
tell.
something? It's amazing. I watched, John Jones is a guy that I'm really kind of like amazed with him. I watched. This guy's like, yes, probably I said the best instincts. I thought Tito Ortiz did it one time too. And I know I'm kind of getting off, but I'm just the description between the two.
Mm-hmm.
But he has a quick movements like that. He's to me, I seen him hit the guy, boom, boom, then it looked like he started with his right foot. Then dang, he's doing the same thing with his left feet. It's like, get back over here. This is where I want you. Not everybody has that. So I'm saying, can you make your feet ambidextrous as well? I don't know. But when you watch fighters like a Marvin Hagler, it's underappreciated because he's broken a fighter down by the time the fight. He didn't try to knock guys out every time. I think Tommy Hearns, he wanted to get rid of. But when he did things, it's so natural. And that's why I say his underappreciation comes from the boxing community because of the media. But I'm telling you, as you well know, this guy
in all ranges too. His fight with Duran. Duran was aged by then, but he was still trouble. Yeah. And the way he just like, okay, I'm gonna stand toe to toe, shoulder to shoulder with Roberto Duran, and I'm gonna try to infight him. So he had his long range weapons. He definitely had his mid range weapon, and even close range. He was an expert at pretty much every aspect or element of boxing you could be an expert at. And like you said, hugely underappreciated. I hope as time goes on, he'll become more and more appreciated.
And a great chin on top of that, along with those other things, because he got caught with some great shots as well. Tommy had hit him. I remember the referee coming to the corner. Tommy hit him with the right hand. He had this blood right between the middle of his head.
Yeah.
And the referee comes over and says, because we're right here, he says, I'll give you one more round. If the bleeding doesn't stop, I'm going to stop the fight. He went like, hey, man, you just told me what I need to do. And that's what he did.
That's a championship mentality right there. Like you have one round to knock out one of the best boxers that there's ever been. It's like, okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. And that's what he went and did.
All right, so we're going to talk about one of the most interesting, shocking at the time fights that ever happened, which is Prince Naseem Hamed versus Antonio Barrera. So, Roy, what are your thoughts on this fight?
Okay, I'm going to play Nostradamus on this one, okay? because I seen Hamed probably, 7, 8 times fighting the East Coast here. Junior Jones, Kevin Kelly, and some of the other nondescript fighters, but let's put it like this, he beat everybody. The guy was full of action. It's the show he puts on before everything else.
Yeah, of course.
But prior to that, I had seen Marco Antonio Barrera when he started fighting like at 16 years of age. They called him the baby-faced assassin. Guy was always smiling. By the time he was 22, he may have been the most accomplished fighter in the lightweight division. Now, people say he started to lose. He lost a couple of fights. I think he lost to Manny. Lost to something. I forget. Junior Jones. Somebody beat him. He lost a fight or so. But when they made that fight, I called that fight for Fox, as a matter of fact. I was supposed to have done it for HBO's International, but Fox offered me $1 more to do it. So I went to, and I was glad I got a chance to, because I got a chance to get a lot of insights on Marco and Hamed too, who I like very well. Interviewed him a couple of times, really liked him. And so
he seems fun.
Oh, he was fun. But you know what I knew that he had? His techniques were horrible. If you went after him, he'd knock you out, like Kevin Kelly. Kevin Kelly went after him. He dropped Kevin. Those guys, that was probably one of the most action fights of the 90s, 2000s I'd ever seen. The fight between Marco Antonio and Kevin Kelly, the flashing flush, as they called him. But he hit Kevin Kelly with a shot that was unreal. But
I haven't seen that fight. I need to watch it.
Oh, you got to see it. Great fight. But when it came to the time to fight Barrera, he had never fought. And as great as Kevin was, these guys, again, we're talking about skill versus the aggression that some fighters have. Marco Barrera was a skilled fighter.
Yeah, he was.
A very skilled fighter. Very skilled fighter. He had never been in a ring with a guy like this. all the antics he had, before it was in Vegas. And I think it must have taken him 30 minutes before he got into the ring. I kid you not. He danced around outside the music. When this guy gets in the ring, it's like, damn, man, how's he going to be able to go any rounds with this guy?
Yeah,
right?
He's already done like so many, like a full gymnastics routine.
Yes.
Yeah.
but that's how he trained. I watched him here in Atlanta. I watched him in Atlantic City. He was in the gym one day. He comes in the gym, right? And this is what he does. He comes into the gym, he warms up, jumps a little rope, maybe 10 minutes on the rope, 20 minutes. Drops the rope, runs to the speed bag, boom, 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 5 or 6 rounds speed bag, boom, 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 drops that, goes over to the heavy bag, boom, 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 never stop it, boom, 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 doing the same thing. Run to the ring, guys come to the shadow box, guy come to the ring, boxes 2 rounds, get out the ring, and he goes. That's him. About an hour and 15 minutes.
So wait, so he didn't take a break?
No, never took a break.
Okay.
Never took a break. So that was not hard for him to do. That was just part of his routine. When you start thinking about it, okay, I do a 20-minute warm-up outside. Fight goes 12 rounds, 36, 45 minutes, about 45 minutes, an hour and a half, a little more. I'm in shape. I can do that. That's what he did with his antics, right?
Yeah.
But this particular night, as he gets into the ring with Barrera squares up on him. And he comes in doing this little herky-jerky. Barrera never got away from it, just jab. Bam! And like he said, wait a minute, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to, but you're supposed
to chase me, or you're supposed to get annoyed. You're supposed to move around because I threatened to do something. You're supposed to bite on my leads.
He didn't do it. But I had made a comment with I think it was me and Bert Sugar. Bert Sugar was a great friend of mine, and I told him, I said, Barrera's going to win this fight. This guy's never been in the ring with a guy like this fella before. Never. A guy who's been fighting since he was a kid. He's fought everybody. And I'm telling you, he's a technician. And he literally took Ahmed to school that night. Ahmed never was the same after that particular fight, as you well know. I think he had one more fight, maybe 2. But one more fight after that, he left alone. You know why? Because he knew then, eventually I'm going to have to start facing guys and this guy, Marco, really was supposed to be an older fighter by that time. He had been in the ring for a few years. I think he was 26, 27 years old by that time. So, at a lightweight in boxing term, that's kind of old. They thought they had a good one. But I told somebody, tonight, you're going to see what's the word I'm looking for?
Resurgence, yeah.
Of the Hispanic fighter. That's, again, I tell you all the time, we talk about culture fights. That was one. And when Marco Barrera beat him, all of a sudden, all the gyms in Los Angeles, the West Side, Mexico, and everywhere else was packed. He done something that even Chavez hadn't been able to do. Even Salvador Sanchez had not been able to do. Marco,
because it was full. It wasn't just technical either. It was. Yeah. I point to it as a fight where someone with amazing technical fundamentals beats the specialist, and we'll get a little bit more into that. But beyond that, Barrera was pissed. There was so much emotion when he threw Hamed to the floor or got him in the double Nelson.
Got him into
up against the ropes. Like he was ready to kill him in there.
Well, the guy made him wait 30 minutes in the damn thing. I can't blame him. I'm saying because he had come, I don't know if you that night. I think he had that green robe on, if I can remember, the one with the little sparkles and stuff. It was hot. It was hot, and he never took that thing off. So I guess he said, "Boy, I'm going to kick your ass if I ever get." And that's what he was going to make that into a match. I'm going to school you, but I'm going to try to embarrass.
No, he beat him like it was like he slept with his sister or something.
Yes,
and then dumped her.
Yeah, right. Then dropped her. That's exactly. I think I had to score like 10 rounds or 2. It wasn't even close.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. I don't think at any point, maybe one point, Hamed was in trouble of getting knocked out.
Yeah.
But if
the 11th round.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It wasn't a huge. Well, it kind of was a huge blowout. I guess it was
unexpected.
It wasn't to the point where Hamed was constantly in trouble of getting knocked out. But there was at no point he looked like he was winning.
No, but that Marco had learned. As I said, I watched him fight him many times, and especially down in Texas, because a lot of those fights back that in those early careers, they came to Texas and did a lot of fights. And I was promoting shows down there as well, so I got a chance to see him. But in his mind, he knew he didn't have to get a knockout to win now.
Yeah, you could tell.
And sometimes it's like, what do I have to lose? If I lose, I'm an older fighter. So I'm going to go out and show the world what I can do. And that night he did. And it got him some more paydays along the way, you know, with Manny and some other guys too. So it enhanced his career. But like every great, you know, he quit after a while, which was good. But he did something I'm telling you, he destroyed the image of Naseem.
To me, it's an example of a fighter falling too much in love with their own specialty techniques, with the way they
you talking about Ahmed, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
with Naseem, he fell so in love with all the flashy, showy moves that he had, as brilliant as they were. And it's not like people say Barrera exposed him, and that's true, but it's not like he exposed him as a bad fighter, I don't think, because you can't look at it's not the most amazing resume, but the way he was able to tool those professional fighters. Hamed had the reflexes, and he was very intelligent. The way he baited people by just keeping his hands low, and some of the knockouts that he was able to pull off from different stances, he was obviously highly intelligent. The problem to me, I think, is that he just forgot his fundamentals. If that's not working, you need to be able to go back and like, okay, circle and jab. Now I'm going to circle and jab. I'm going to build on it, and then when I wear the guy down. Barrera just didn't let him have an inch from the first exchange.
Again, we talked about Tommy Hearns a little while ago, right? Same thing. You lean too much on what you think is what got you there, but you have to do the things that got you to that point. Because Ahmed was the first guy I ever seen literally could knock a guy out. Man, I mean, he'd have his right foot behind his left foot. I mean, and it hit a guy with a punch and just knock him through the. I mean, the guy, it was amazing where his power was. But it was. I mean, I'm like, how did he do that? You know, damn, the guy was doing everything wrong, but he did it. I mean, you know, the fighter got going on, then I said, go, bam, then the guy's gone. What the hell is that punch coming? And I called quite a few of his fights, so I got a chance to see, you know, a lot of him. But I knew as a technician that he wasn't, and I knew that Marco wasn't. If he didn't pull Marco out of his whole thing, Marco Barrera would win that fight. I didn't think it'd go live. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't think it'd be like that. But I had Barrera win.
But you knew he'd win. Well, the thing with anyone who's worried about fighting a southpaw should 100% watch that fight, because Barrera showed fundamentally how to be not just an angled fighter who likes to, you know, switch stances and use all those crazy angles all the time. And by the way, the way to do that, the way he did it, in my opinion, is to just cut them off with really short, tight combinations, which is exactly what he did. Because Hamed liked to lean in and throw those big overhands and those big leaping uppercuts. And Barrera was just like, okay, you could throw those big shots, but I'm going to start off with the jab. Then I'm going to hit you with 3 body shots before you even know what the hell is happening. But
he never got wild in that fight.
No, and then the thing he did with the southpaw element was, first of all, if you're in an open stance with opposite feet, if you pivot off your lead foot, it acts just like a slip. So you don't actually need to move your head.
That's right. You don't have to move.
Right. He did that.
You put yourself in another position.
Exactly. And he came under the jab and he came over the jab, and he controlled what Hamed had used to set up every technique in every fight before then, and just denied him access to it. And it was beautifully done.
That night in the arena and in Vegas, right? In the 12th round came, the whole crowd just realized that they had seen something. You know, and I think that may have been the first real appreciation of Barrera.
Yeah.
Because remember, he came on the heels of Salvador Sanchez, had been killed a few years earlier, of course, a decade earlier.
Yeah. How are you going to compete with a flawless guy who's now passed away? You know,
passed away. And Oscar De La Hoya was an American fighter. so he didn't have the legacy that, over in Mexico. They liked him, don't get me wrong, but this guy is truly authentic. You know what I'm saying? They're all authentic. And so that particular one, because you just knocked the crown off of a goofy as he was, but one of the best fighters around in those last 5 years that you've seen in the sport of boxing at that weight division.
Yeah, and you definitely don't want to denigrate the fight by saying that Prince just was exposed as not a great fitter, because he absolutely was, and that discredits Barrera. Barrera just fought a near perfect fight to expose all the weakness of in MMA. I'd say there's this guy, he retired now. Who knows if he's really retired, right? But Cejudo. I don't know if you've watched Cejudo's fight. He was like he was a wrestling gold medalist, and he does great against these angled specialist fighters like Dominic Cruz and T.J. Dillashaw. Both use fancy footwork and long distance punches to set everything up. And sometimes the best thing to do is just short, tight shots. Keep moving into them and don't react the way that you want them to. So whether you're in kickboxing, MMA, boxing, Naseem versus Barrera should definitely be a go-to if you're looking to how to beat those tricky guys with fundamentals. Guys,
exactly. And you beat them with fundamentals, because when it boils down to it, I don't care who you are, unless a guy just strictly overpowers you, which basically the heavyweights can do that sometimes. Certain fighters can do that. But those lighter weights, man, you have to have the skill and the technique to win those fights, because not many of those guys can walk through. Which again, we talked about Hagler too, that has that quality to just walk through punches regardless. So but that was the one, and I still say that perhaps one of the best calls that I ever did was in that particular fight. I love talking about that fight all the time.
Good. Well, we love hearing about it.